Parliamentarians in Europe are calling for more severe sanctions on the regime in Iran. MEPs voted on a resolution that, among several sanctions, also calls for Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps to be blacklisted in Europe. Also known as the IRGC, it's the regime's paramilitary force that is cracking down on ongoing protests in the country. So far, at least 525 people, including 71 children, have been killed. 4 men have been officially executed. Over 19,000 have been arrested. The call to list the IRGC as a terrorist entity is also a subject of continued debate here in Canada. Ratna Omidvar is an independent senator from Ontario. Senator, thank you so much for speaking with us. I'd like to start by asking you why you think Canada should put more pressure on the regime in Iran, as you argue in your op-ed.
Well, there are a number of really important reasons. Canada must act not just because it's an issue in a country and maybe limited regionally in one's imagination, but the impact of Iran globally is significant. It plays a role in creating instability in the Middle East. It is now providing drones to Russia, and Russia's legitimate invasion of Ukraine. Domestically, it has oppressed women for 43 years. And all these, I think, are really important issues for Canadians to consider and to take action on as we join other voices of solidarity to help the people on the inside of Iran as we are on the outside.
Where do you see room for Canada to step up its sanctions packages?
Well, first of all, I believe, and I join my voice to those of others who have called on the government of Canada to sanction the IRGC in its entirety. This would mean not just a travel ban, but a ban on transaction, freezing of assets if they have any in Canada. And finally, Canada now has the power, it has the legitimate tools to not just freeze assets, but to seize them and repurpose them back to victims of human rights oppressions. This is a new law that was called into effect last year, and I was the initial proposer of this law. Minister Joly has adopted it, and currently the government is seizing the assets of Roman Abramovich to repurpose those assets to help the victims in the war in Ukraine. The exact same principles apply to Iran. So there are a number of things in the sanctions regime that Canada must and can do.
Canada has already designated the regime as one that commits terrorism under the Immigration Act, effectively banning thousands of IRGC members from entering. You've sort of spoken about this in the past, but how would listing the IRGC as a terrorist entity differ?
Well, then you list the entirety of the IRGC, not just certain arms of it, as you mentioned. Mm-hmm. And I think that is really important because it is the IRGC that is the terrorist arm of a terrorist regime. And if we are to stop the terror in Iran, which is spreading, as we know, not just in Iran, but other parts of the world where they have influence, then we must get at the heart of the oppression, and that is the IRGC.
So far, the government has argued that doing something like that is extremely complicated and resource draining to list the IRGC. And those that have been conscripted would unfairly be punished. But is there a way that these legal obstacles, as complicated as they may be, is there a way to deal with them?
Of course, there is a way to deal with them if the political will is there. I understand that the government of Canada does not want to catch the little fish. No one wants to catch conscripted young boys who are forced by Iranian law to do a year of military service, either in the professional army or in the IRGC. They have no role in that, so they should not be punished. We must focus on the sharks. And we can do that if we, as I said, list the entirety of the IRGC as a terrorist entity, as the US has done, as the UK is now considering. And we can always deal with exceptions on a case-by-case basis, as we do in other parts of our immigration process.
You mentioned political will. Do you think the political will is there?
I think it is up to the people of Canada to release the political will. I am certainly incredibly impressed by the diaspora of Iranian Canadians who have come out very loudly, very effectively in calling for this in different ways. 2 weeks ago, I attended the memorial service in Toronto to honor the victims of PS 752, and the Prime Minister, the leader of the opposition, major ministers of the cabinet attended the memorial and listened to what was said for a good 3 hours. I'm in Ottawa. I know how this works, and I was impressed by the passion, by the very effective reasoning, and the calls on the government of Canada to take this next step.
I know that this is a very personal topic for you, as you yourself fled Iran back in 1981. I wonder how you view the protests as we're watching them unfold. Do you think that they're different, and do you think the people of Iran will be able to bring about regime change in the months or even years to come?
I think there is a different edge to it this time, and maybe I am being hopeful, as I am. My name, Omidvar, means hope, and I embrace that. And I also embrace the responsibility that the Prime Minister put on me when he called me to the Senate. And the press release actually said I was the first Iranian Canadian senator. I'm born in India, but I married into Iranian citizenship. And I lived through the revolution, and I saw hope in the revolution at that time in 1978 to throw over the monarchy and replace it with democracy. That hope was sadly not fulfilled, partly because there were so many factions that could not come together, and it was then overtaken by the Islamists. Today, I see something different. I see that the people in Iran are protesting, led by women, but also supported by young men. They are supported by lawyers, journalists, environmentalists, animal lovers. I mean, there are sections of the Iranian community that have been oppressed for close to 4 decades, and they're now finally releasing themselves from these bounds of oppression. And we on the outside must do everything we can to help them. I do see hope, and I certainly believe that it is the outside world, what Canada can do, what the United States can do, what Europe can do, what other countries can do, that will lift the people in Iran and support them in their struggle for freedom.
Senator, thank you very much for your time today.
You're very welcome.